So hey guys, welcome back to the channel. On this video, I have a special guest. I'm doing an interview, obviously, and we have Benji Bruce here. And I'm so excited because on my channel, I like to talk about business and mindset. And I think that's very important when it comes to business and having the appropriate mindset and, you know, honestly developing it. Because sometimes we get into business, we don't even have that right mindset. I know I didn't. So I really want to talk about that. I want to talk about your journey and how other people can adopt a certain mindset to be successful in their business. So before we get into all of that, I would love to know a little bit about your story and the background on you, because I know you are in Las Vegas.
Yep.
Currently, and you actually used to live here in the Springs. I'd
Yep.
love to know your story and what took you out there.
Yeah. Well, first off, Springs, it was too damn cold. So I was like, forget it. I'm done.
I live here.
Yeah. That's global warming for you, the climate change stuff. But yeah, basically I started out as an illusionist. Like when I was 10, I started learning. When I was 13, I started performing in restaurants. I was like making money in restaurants, and I was doing that my entire life, like a little bit past college and everything. So I started out as an illusionist. I became a mentalist. I was doing like more of the mind reading shows rather than magic. And then after that, what happened was I was trying to think, how do I charge more? And I realized if I called myself a speaker, I would just get paid more. So even though I was still doing like the same shows, I was just like, oh, I'm a keynote speaker instead of the entertainer. I'm the keynote speaker. So they just paid me more. And then after about like a year, someone said like, well, what do you speak about? I was like, motivation. And then that's when I actually started speaking. And so, yeah, I just transitioned into speaking, being like a motivational speaker, combine it with entertainment and stuff. And then as I was doing that, people were asking me, like entertainers and speakers, they were asking me like, how am I getting all these gigs? Because I would get hired by everybody, like Aflac, AAA, Remax, everybody. And so I just showed them everything I was doing. Like, here's the process, the CRM, the email templates, all this stuff. So I showed them everything. And then I was doing the online stuff. And once I reached, so I hit like a 6-figure month mark with the online thing. And I was like, oh, damn. And at that point, I stopped like performing altogether. And I just strictly went online and I started doing the online stuff. Yeah. And then it's just from there, it's like I've just been doing that, the online stuff. I actually like the business online stuff more than being on stage and more than performing.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, I've always liked the business stuff in general, because I think like when I was just performing, I had the craft, I had the skill, but I couldn't get on a stage at first. I couldn't figure out how to make like real money doing it. Of course, the restaurants were paying me, I was getting tips, but I wanted like corporate gigs. I couldn't really figure it out. And so I had to learn the business side. So I was reading like more business books, and the more business books that I read, the more I liked it. And then, I mean, I realized to get on a stage or to do anything with business, to make money in anything that you do, any hobby, whatever, you have to, most of it is like business. Like it's 80% business, 20% of whatever it is you're doing. So if you're a musician, you want to be the next Beyonce, 50 Cent, Jay-Z, whoever, it's 80% business, 20% you actually like doing the singing and all that, because you have to promote yourself. And so I just like promoting more than actual performing, because the performing got too easy. It's like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. It just got too easy. So then I just switched to the business.
So I'm going to get more into that. But before we get into that, I want to go back, because you started doing this stuff at 13.
Yeah.
That is pretty incredible, in my opinion, because I have my daughter is 12. And yeah, I think that's pretty dope that you were doing it at 13. So like, I'm curious, like what your mindset was at 13. Like why?
Well, I mean, at 13, it was more like well, I mean, I wouldn't say an accident, but I didn't get the first restaurant gig for myself, because when I was 10, I was like learning. And of course I heard about restaurant entertainers, and it was me and my mom. We went to a restaurant called Red Hot and Blue in the Springs. And it was like this barbecue spot off of like Austin Bluffs. It was amazing. And so we would go there. And then one day we were there, and my mom was like, oh, like, what do you think about like doing it here, like performing here? And I was like, oh yeah, it'd be cool. So she just asked for the manager. She was like, hey, can you bring the manager over? And sure enough, the GM comes over and she's like, hey, my son, he's an illusionist. Can you show you something real quick? If you like it, he can perform every weekend. And that was that. I just showed him something. He liked it. And then boom, like from that moment, I was just doing every week. And so in the beginning, I wasn't really all that business minded in the beginning. It was just, I was just doing it more for practice just because I liked doing it. Of course, I wanted to make money at it, but it happened slowly. It was like gradually. I know people tend to think like there's like an epiphany, but that's not how it really works. It happens like gradually, like builds up to it. Yeah. And so that's basically what happened.
And so I think that's important to what you said before, because even, you know, I host Colorado's Grand Talent with Cliff Cage, and we meet amateur artists and dancers and singers and things like that. And people are so talented. And you can even go on social media and then go on Instagram and look at some people's videos, and you can just see their passion and their talent. However, there's that business side that you talk about. And I think it's important for, even because like I also do another show with a comedian, and that's one of the things we talk about all the time is that like comedians don't know how to build their brand, how to build the business of who they are and the art that they do. And so I want to talk about that because you obviously was able to do that, and that's what you do in your business. So what kind of advice would you give people that are, you know, artists and performers in really building that brand and business?
Well, I mean, what you're really doing is you're reverse engineering a lot of stuff. And so if you have money, you want to get a mentor. And what's funny is I used to hear people say this, and I used to think, oh, they're just saying that because they want my money. And sure, they do want your money, but it also, what a mentor does is it's like you're going through, I don't know, like you're going through like an area full of landmines or whatever. Okay. So there's a ton of landmines. And if you go at it yourself, you are bound to blow up without a doubt. But if you go at it with a guy who literally knows where the landmines are, he's going to say, no, don't do that. Don't go over there. No, don't go over there. And so that's what the mentor does. So first things first, if you can't actually like be around a mentor, then you have to read a ton of books and all that. And you got to like pay attention in that way, like from a distance. But if you can be around them, you have to be around them. It's like what Tony Robbins said in terms of modeling. Like what you're doing is you're looking at what already works, and then you're just duplicating it. So in the beginning, you don't want to, you're not trying to reinvent the wheel. In the beginning, you're just saying, okay, who laid the groundwork for what I'm doing? I'm going to copy them, like literally copy them. And that's what I did. I did that with everything. Like even when I built the online business, like a dummy at first, I didn't copy anybody because I knew kind of what to do in terms of like, oh, build an email list, whatever. So I was kind of doing it, but it wasn't really working. And then I just say, you know what? There's these guys, they're doing 7 figures a month. Well, now it's like 8 figures a month. But I was like, okay, I'm looking at these guys, and I literally duplicated everything they did. I said, okay, they're emailing every day. I'm going to email every day. Their website looks like this. My website's going to pretty much look like that. I duplicated everything. And that was how I built everything up. So that's kind of the first thing you're doing. And then after you figure out who to kind of model, who to copy, it's strictly like it's promoting in terms of you have to understand like what it is you're trying to sell. So let's say like as a musician, what exactly are you trying to do? Like you don't want to sell albums because you're not really making too much money off of that. So like if you do maybe live shows, whatever, then that is what you're going to, like, let's say you want to focus on live shows. You'll say, okay, I'm going to reach out to all these venues, and then we're going to do something like that. Or you could go a different route in terms of just doing online. Like you want to blow up online or whatever. And so you start at the end, and then you reverse engineer what it is you're doing, and you get insanely focused on the thing that you want to accomplish. If you have to get so clear on it that if you tell someone, here's the end goal that I want to have happen, and you don't make that happen, it's very clear on whether or not you made it happen or you didn't. So like if I say I want to make $1 million and I don't, it's very clear like whether or not I'm going to make it. If I say I want to be the greatest singer in the world, well, it's not really clear in terms of what the end goal is. So it's like you start with the end goal in terms of being very clear about what it is you're going after. It's like with me, when I was just performing, the end goal was like getting on the stages. I want to do at least 50 events a year. I want to charge anywhere between 10 and 30,000 per show. So it's like I hit that goal and stuff. And so it was very clear. Like if I did 30 shows at $500, then I didn't hit my goal. But if I was doing 50 shows and each of them are like 10,000 each, then I could see that I hit my goal. So a lot of people, they're not clear to begin with.
Yeah.
And so,
like you said, I think it's important to be specific.
yeah.
You know, I talk about manifesting on my channel as well. And one of the things is like living in the end. And so knowing exactly what you want. So it's like having that end goal, but being specific, because like you said, sometimes people are just so general when it comes to their goals. Like if I'm a singer, I want to be a good singer, but what does that mean? Like,
Yeah.
what are the specifics behind what it is that you really, really want? And another thing that I really love that you said is that it's like you're really adopting a mindset. And one of the things on your channel you talk about is this, what is it, Billionaire Bruce? Is that the name?
Yes, my alter ego, Billionaire Bruce.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's important too, because when you are, especially if you're a performer, an artist, you are your business. And so you really have to adopt this mindset that you are the business. So let's talk about mindset. Like, why did you even create an alter ego?
Yeah, so the alter ego is like, because everyone does things because they have a certain identity in their head. So it's like the identity basically creates all these reasons, excuses for doing things where they can't do things. And so I sat down and I realized in terms of, like, I read a lot of biographies. So I realized like billionaires, they operate from a standpoint of almost like they're creating the world around them. And in terms of creating the world around them, I mean like they're actively creating the world around them. Like, and so there's that in terms of they're ruthless with their time, like all sorts of things. And so I figured, okay, if I can like step into this identity, and then when I step into that identity, that person is gonna just blow everything up. That person's just gonna do business like crazy. Because if you think about it, if you take someone like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and you take that person, you put them into your situation, whether you're a musician, whatever, like you gave them your skills and all that sort of stuff, and they're in your situation, and like they have the exact bank account you have, everything. Could they become a millionaire within a couple of years or a year? The answer is yes. Like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, these guys, they're competitive as hell, especially someone like Bill Gates. The mofo is competitive. And so I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, if I just take this person, I put it inside me, then that person's going to essentially propel my business. And that's kind of what happens. Like when I'm in Billionaire Bruce mode, I'm ruthless as hell in terms of like my time. No one can reach me in any way, in terms of like all sorts of things, in terms of like saying no to pretty much everything other than what I'm focusing on. Like there's all sorts of things that Billionaire Bruce has with alter ego. And a lot of people have it. Like Beyonce has her alter ego. A lot of them, they have their alter egos and
Sasha
stuff.
Fierce.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of them have it. And so the alter ego just allows you to do things that you normally wouldn't do. And so, yeah, that's why I created the alter ego. I really do recommend people kind of create like an alter ego, and that alter ego, you just allow that person to do things that you normally wouldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you ask yourself that question. What would you say? What would Tony Robbins do?
Yeah.
I thought that was good.
That might have been like how the alter ego maybe started too, because like as I was like building the speaking business, I realized I had to sound in demand and everything. I couldn't be like, oh, can I please get the gig? I couldn't like do that. Yeah. It was more like, I'm so damn busy, I don't really know if I have time. So it's like I had to kind of act like that. But I was seeing in terms like how, and so how there's a WWJD. What would Jesus do? I said, what would Tony Robbins do? WWTRD. So every time I got an email or anything about an event, I said, okay, how would Tony Robbins respond to this? And it was like little things in terms of they can't talk to Benji Bruce because you can't just email Tony Robbins, just talk to him. You just can't. You can be like, hey, Tony, we'll pay you $1 million for an event. You still won't be able to get him on the phone unless you give him a deposit. So it's like little things like that, to where when people contacted me for an event, they couldn't talk to Benji Bruce. They were talking to the assistant. the virtual assistant. They were talking to somebody else until they put the deposit down. Then they could talk to me. So it's like little things like that, and even just how I talked in the emails to sound more in demand. So that's why I use what would Tony Robbins do, like in each situation, and it really worked. Like it really works.
I think it's important to have someone that you look up to that is already done, like you said, is already done what you're trying to do. Like mine is Oprah. I'm like obsessed with her, and I like study her and I actually, it's funny, I actually ask myself that, what would Oprah do in this situation? And it's very important because it starts a mind shift, and you start thinking differently because gosh, I want to say Dr. Joe Dispenza said something along these lines. If you want to change your life, you have to become a different person. You really do. Like, I can't be where I want to be in my career, my life, thinking the same thoughts I was thinking as broke ass Amber. You know, you can't do those kind of things. So you really have to adopt a different mindset. And actually, like, I love that you read biographies. I think that's so important. That's one of the things that I love to do. Well, I don't read. I like to, listen to YouTube. It's easy. Yeah. But like things like that, because it keeps you inspired, it keeps you motivated. And so I love that. So moving on and transitioning to like exactly like some of the things that you do, especially like in your academy, how can you help people become a brand?
Yeah, the academy and stuff like that is more focused on basically how to build and monetize an audience. So,
okay. Well, that's kind of like building a brand, I feel.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think at this point, and this is one thing I have to say, I think that everyone should be building a personal brand at this point, right?
Yeah. I mean, unless you're like a biochemist or something, but
even so, you can still do that, right?
Yeah, maybe. It depends. Yeah. So like to me, it depends. Like most people should, but yeah, like the only reason I don't really say like building a personal brand too much is because I focus more on monetizing. So the problem that I have with like a lot of people who talk about just like building a following is I'm like, I summed it up. I posted like this quote thing a while ago where I said, if your social media following is bigger than your bank account, then you're building your business wrong. And so a lot of people, they focus on their social media followers. They're like, oh, here's how many Instagram followers I got, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, like, well, what does your bank account look like? And what really did this for me was it was actually out here. Like I've always had that in the back of my mind, but I almost switch to kind of everyone else thinking in terms of like building a following of Instagram followers, all that sort of stuff. But when I met some guys out here, they were doing 7 figures a month. I went to like their mansion and stuff. These guys, they only had like on their Instagram following, they had 3,000 followers, 5,000 followers. They didn't really have anybody, but they were doing 7 figures a month. And so I'm like looking at all the stuff that they're doing on the back end, they're focused strictly on monetizing. And I noticed every single person, every single friend that I have who's making a ton of money, they focus strictly on monetizing. So that's kind of what I really talk about in terms of like, yeah, you're building your following, but you're focusing on monetizing the following. There's no point in having 1 million followers and you're broke as all hell.
So isn't that sort of like when I think of building a personal brand, I think of it as a business. So it's not so much about vanity metrics, about like how many followers you have, but how you really can monetize you as a brand. Is that kind of, no?
Yeah. I mean, it's just a matter, it's like anything in terms of, first I tell people to start out with, what are you going to sell? And then basically send traffic to the thing that you're going to sell. So when people think in terms of like just building a brand, they don't think of what they're going to sell. They don't start at the end. They basically just say, well, I'm just going to like keep posting stuff. And what happens is you keep posting stuff, but you don't know why you're posting it. You don't know where you're going. Like there's no vision in any way. And so what happens is after a while, you're going to essentially stop because you're like, what am I doing this for? And so what happened is, in the beginning, you're not going to get the feedback that you need. Like you're not going to get the social media followers, all that sort of stuff. You're not going to freaking blow up and be Gary Vaynerchuk instantly. Like posting a video, everyone's going to like it, none of that sort of stuff. That's not going to happen. So you're going to get demotivated by it because you're going to post videos or podcasts or whatever. Nobody's going to pay attention to it, or at least not the amount of people that you expect. And all of a sudden you're going to get demotivated, especially over time. You'll get demotivated because you keep doing it. You're like, damn, nobody's liking my stuff, comment, what the hell?
I know.
On the other hand, if you're strictly focused on like, hey, monetize, and you're like, I don't give a damn if a single person likes my video. I just made 10 grand. And so
I would love to know what, if someone were to come to you, what, and they really want to build something, you know, and monetize, like have an online business and monetize it. What would be your advice? So it's not so much about, you would think you would want to come up with the product first. Is that what you're saying? Like,
yeah, you have to come up with something you're going to sell. Like, what's the point of like doing stuff if you're not going to sell something? So it's like, what exactly are you selling? Because you have to reverse engineer everything. So it's like, as an entertainer and speaker, I never did online stuff. There was no reason to do all this content and all this sort of stuff. There was no reason, because to reverse engineer getting hired as an entertainer, it was strictly like, I want to get hired as an entertainer at company events, Aflac, AAA, all that sort of stuff, when they do Christmas parties or whatever. So I knew that if I sent them an email and I said, hey, I'm the greatest speaker alive or greatest entertainer alive, and not exactly like that, but if I basically said something in the email and they saw my website and they were like, okay, this is a great website, let's hire him. That's how I would get hired. And so I reverse engineered what I was selling. On the other hand, when I was doing the online stuff, I'm not reaching out to people. I'm not like doing cold emails or anything like that. I'm spending money on advertising, because the way people buy online programs is they see an ad, they opt in, and then they'll buy eventually. And so that's how people buy. So you have to start out, you always start with the end. It's like, what exactly are you trying to do? What are you trying to sell? So that's what you have to start with. Then from there, what you're selling determines how you're going to sell that thing. So if you are selling like an online program or whatever, you obviously build out the program. And then from there, you spend a lot of money on advertising to bring them to an opt-in. And then you can create content and all that and promote. So that's kind of what it is you're doing. But it really depends on what it is someone's trying to do. So that's the thing. And so, but like building and monetizing an audience, it's really simple. It's kind of like, well, what's your offer? What exactly are you selling? And then traffic, you send traffic to the offer. That's literally all you're doing. Now it comes down to the details. Now it comes down to, okay, what exactly are you selling? How are you wording it? Because the way you word it with the copywriting, all that sort of stuff, that's going to like influence whether or not it even sells to begin with, like all sorts of stuff. So now you're getting into the details. It's similar to like, let's say you learn any sport. Let's say basketball. Basketball, all you need to know how to do is shoot, dribble, and play defense. That's it. Just 3 things, and you can now be the next Michael Jordan. But can you shoot as well as Michael Jordan? Can you dribble as well? Can you play defense as well? So that's kind of what it comes down to. It's the same with building and monetizing an audience. It's like there's traffic and offer. So it's like, sure, it's just 2 things, but now how well are you, like how good are you at those 2 things? So that's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people are at this point, especially with the way things are now, are really looking to convert things to online and actually like monetize, have some sort of, honestly too, outside of like having brick and mortars, a lot of people are actually trying to go online, but having additional revenue streams. And I think that's so important. And I think that we've all seen how the importance of having additional revenue streams, and you can definitely do that with, you know, building stuff online.
Speaking of like different revenue streams, what I want to say is you should focus on one, like literally just.
You're going to say that.
Yeah, because so like I know a lot of people, they're like, oh, I got to have like all these revenue streams or whatever. I'm like, look, once you hit $1 million, you can focus on different revenue streams. But until you hit $1 million, you got to focus on one, because it's like there are so many details, and learning that one thing, like you have to get really, really good at it. And until you get good at it, when you split your focus, now all of a sudden you're not going to get good at any one of those things, because it's like if you say, If you say you want to be the greatest basketball player in the world and you start practicing basketball, football, boxing, tennis, you will never be the greatest basketball player in the world. You simply can't. You're doing too many things. But if you say, I'm going to be the greatest basketball player in the world, and all you do all day, every day is play basketball and practice basketball, you're going to be great at it. And then once you're great at it, like Michael Jordan, then all of a sudden you can say, okay, well, now that I'm done, I'm going to start doing golf. And so it's like, that's kind of why I tell people, and maybe not like a million, maybe it's like if you hit multiple six figures, but I tell people in the beginning, just one thing, you just insanely focused.
I know that's kind of what the conversation you and I had.
Yep. Yeah.
So in your academy, is that what you teach? Like those like in the weeds specific things?
Yeah, the academy is more like so the Bruce Academy, it's basically skills in terms of all the skills you need to build and monetize an audience, like copywriting, setting up like a studio, and then how to build an email opt-in list and how to promote like the emails, all that sort of stuff, how to promote, build sales videos, all that sort of stuff. So it's basically how to build and monetize an audience. On top of that, what I'm doing, what I just started recently, is like a diary thing where I'm basically going to show everyone what I'm doing in my business. So there's my business. This is the public speaking business, the speakinglifestyle.com, where I show speakers how to get on stages and all sort of stuff. So I don't really promote that to people who aren't speakers. But what I'm going to do with the Bruce Academy is I'm going to tell everyone in the Bruce Academy, and I'm going to show everybody, here's what I'm doing in this business. Here's the emails I'm sending out. Here's how I'm promoting all this sort of stuff. Here's how I'm selling people. So I'm basically going to it's going to be a behind the scenes type of thing. That's kind of what I'm doing with that. But it's a combination of skills that everyone needs to build and monetize an audience. Plus, here's what I'm doing to build and monetize this audience. So it's like a ton of things.
I've seen some of your YouTube videos. You're also on YouTube as well, and you're sharing like your days and stuff. That is so much fun. I love to see that because it's interesting to kind of get like an inside look on what, like you said, your days look like and how you actually, like, I think I saw the video where you had a day of just filming content, which is really interesting, and like that kind of stuff. So definitely follow him on YouTube. But I think that's all for this video. I think that we really touched a lot of things, and I really, really appreciate you doing this video interview with me. I was so excited because what you're doing is amazing. I love your branding too, by the way. Like,
cool,
before we exit this interview, I want to get the scoop. Purple? What's the deal with you?
Well,
okay.
So the background, it's so basically when I started performing, my colors, it was blue. Like I was using blue as my main colors. But the problem is everybody was using blue. All the entertainers, everybody uses blue for their brand. So I was like, okay, well, maybe not blue. Let me do gold. So I picked gold because I'm thinking, oh, gold, luxury. Oh, this is perfect for the corporate market. The problem is back then, gold looked more like either orange or yellow on the website. So I was like, yeah, I couldn't really find the right gold. So I was thinking, I'm like, okay, purple. And so like purple has the royalty thing. Plus like at Sierra High School and stuff, the black people school, black people don't wear purple. Black people like purple, pink. They're like, that's gay. So I was like, okay, not too many guys are going to wear purple.
Purple is pretty, isn't that
now people are cool with it and everything. But back then, this like when Cameron, the rapper, when he started wearing pink, everyone thought it was cool and everything.
Yeah.
So, but like even back then, it was more like, it's kind of gay. And so I was thinking like, okay, not so many guys are wearing purple. And so sure enough, people weren't wearing purple. And then what happened, like that became my color. And I wasn't wearing it every day though. Like I was still wearing different colored shirts or whatever. But what happened is I was filming so many videos. I was like doing so much. I would always wear a purple shirt in my videos. I was filming so many videos. I was wearing purple shirts like 4 or 5 days out of the week. And I was like, oh, well, might as well just wear it 7 days out of the week. And it was like that combined with the branding of, I used to perform this routine where I would borrow a quarter and they would like put their initials on the quarter, sign it, whatever. And then the quarter would just like bend. They would stick out their finger and boom, it would bend. And what happened is they get to keep, because I mean, it's their quarter. So they keep it as a souvenir, this bent quarter. And so years later, people would come up to me like, they still have the quarter. Like, Benji, I got this quarter. I remember when you did this, whatever. And so I was thinking like, oh, the purple can be what that quarter was. So whenever people see purple and I'm not there, they'll be reminded of me. And it happens all the time. Like people are in a store, they'll text me a picture of a shirt, a purple shirt. They're like, Benji, here's your purple. And so it's like, that's kind of what I wanted it to do in terms of like when I'm not there, I want people to see something and instantly be like, oh yeah, Benji. And
Yeah.
so that
And
was part of it.
that's smart. And it kind of reminds me of like the turtleneck, Steve Jobs. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
he's kind of known for that. And like
Yeah.
even who's the other guy that wears like the same, it looks like he wears the same
Zuckerberg.
shirt. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
Zuckerberg. Yeah.
Looks like he wears the same shirt every day, but I'm sure he's
Yeah.
not. But
Yeah. They just buy the same shirt. They just buy like 10 of them, or
yeah.
Zuckerberg probably bought like 365 of them. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I mean, well, someone like Zuckerberg, Obama did it too with suits. They do it mostly because they don't want to use up their thinking to
Right.
figure out like, oh, like what am I going to wear today? And so that's kind of why a lot of them do that. But like earlier when you talked about biographies, I do want to suggest to people like to read more biographies, because I've read a lot of motivational books and everything. I hung around a lot of guys, and first off, a lot of the guys, they aren't who you think they are. Because I met a lot of them in person. I talked to a lot of them. I get to see like what happens behind the scenes with a lot of stuff, and they're very different. A lot of them are very different,
By
and
that you
so
mean.
yeah, and it's like that's why I recommend to people to read biographies, because you get a very realistic view of people. So like right now I'm reading The Power Broker, which talks about Robert Moses, who basically built New York. Like all of New York is New York because of Robert Moses. And when you read biographies, you see all sides of the equations to people. So like Robert Moses, once he started getting power, he started ignoring whether things were legal or not. Like he did something and someone said, hey, this is illegal. They said, we're going to sue you. He said, well, like he was building a park. Like what you're doing here, like this is illegal. You're not allowed to do this. He said, well, do what you want to do. Sue me, whatever, but I'm going to keep doing it. And sure enough, he kept doing it. They sued him. He delayed everything to a point where the park was actually built. That they won the suit or whatever, but they couldn't do anything about it because the park was built. And so when you read things like that, it's kind of like you see a very realistic perspective of things. Because let's say you come across someone like Robert Moses, you don't know how to deal with that, because it's like, oh, well, it's illegal. You shouldn't be doing it. It's unethical. You shouldn't be doing it. And he's doing it and he's crushing you. And so you have to like understand that there are people like that, and you have to know how to deal with them in certain situations. And things like even hearing about like Kobe, Jordan, in terms of like the ruthlessness, in terms of how competitive they are, stuff like that. And what you'll see is that people who are at the top, they don't think like everyone else, and they have a very competitive drive that if they revealed it to people, like in a book or whatever, people wouldn't understand it, just because of it's like a do whatever it takes mentality type of thing. And it's like very vicious, to say the least. Like look, Bill Gates, perfect example. If you look at Bill Gates, like his interviews or whatever, the guy's very calm and everything, obviously smart, and he's like,
Yeah.
oh, hello. But he is the most ruthless and competitive mofo ever. Well, back in the Microsoft days. Now I don't really know, but back in the Microsoft days, he was ruthless and competitive as all hell. He was a guy you did not want to go up against. And so that combined with he's smart. And so it's things like that in terms of why I tell people like read biographies, look at how things are actually working, because if you don't, you're going to get blindsided by reality. Reality is just going to kick you in your face. So you definitely want to pay close attention.
By that, what do you mean by that? I think I know what you're saying, because I mean I've done certain things in business. I like, especially like with my event production business, and I've experienced that ruthlessness. Like it is real.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I just, what do you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, because like the ruthlessness, it depends on the situation. So, and that's why like it's hard to really describe. But like what I'm saying is like when you read biographies, you see you see just reality in general. Because when I would, so there was like these magic forums with all these entertainers, these magicians. Now there's like the Facebook groups and everything. And this is in every industry, magicians, musicians, realtors, insurance agents, whatever. When you say you're going to do something like, oh, I'm going to do this thing, like for example, as an illusionist, one of the things I would do, I'll crash hotel events. So let's say there's a hotel event going on, I don't know, wedding reception, whatever it is. I just wear a suit, walk right in as if I'm supposed to be there. And then I would start performing for people. And I perform for like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, whatever. Then I'd look for the person in charge and I would go there and I'd pitch them. I'd be like, hey, would you just like me to stay? And then you can just pay X amount or whatever. So I posted online to the other entertainers. I'm like, hey guys, like, here's what I'm doing to get some gigs. And so this is like a very, well, it wasn't very, well, yeah, I guess it was kind of known. Like I didn't invent it, but basically I posted what I was doing. And these guys were like, that's unethical. You shouldn't just crash an event, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys are losers. Like the whole time, like these dudes are losers, because what I see is a lot of people, who basically aren't making money. They see things like that. They're like, that's unethical. And like I said, in every industry, real estate, insurance, whatever it is, people will say things like that's unethical. I haven't seen a single successful person, not one, do something that other people wouldn't consider unethical. So it's like things like that. And that's what I'm talking about in terms like seeing the reality of situations, because like fake it till you make it type thing. Like nowadays people take that thing too damn far to fake it till you make it. But like back in the day, the way I faked it till I made it was so I would do things. Let's say I would perform for somebody. I walk into a hotel, whoever the hell was just outside, like, there's just events going on, whoever's just sitting down, I go and I perform for them. After I performed for him, I'd take out, well, at the time, the phones didn't have the cameras, but it was like the flip camera or whatever. But I would take out a camera and I'd get a testimonial. But before the testimonial, I would say like, hey, say your name and say the company that you work for. So they'd be like, oh, my name is Benji. I work for Remax and blah, blah, blah. Benji, this guy, this loser, he was amazing, whatever. And so I would post those videos online as a testimonial. And it would look like I did a show for Remax. Like after you see that, the guy would say, oh, I'm John, I work with Remax. It would look like Remax hired me, but they really didn't. It was just some random guy who works for Remax I just got a testimonial from. So it's like little things like that, that I would do to like fake it or whatever. Even there was another one I thought it was funny. A guy named Darren Brown, he's like the David Copperfield in the UK. And I went to his website, and on his website, on the contact page, it said, for corporate bookings, contact this email. For media inquiries, contact this email. And when I looked at it, I was like, damn, like this dude is so popular. He literally has a separate email address just for media inquiries. So what did I do? I was like, oh, okay, let me just do that on my website. So on my website, I put, for media inquiries, contact this email address. Even though I didn't have the media hit me up like that, I did it anyways because of the perception that it created. And so like things like that, that's what happens in the real world. And so when people aren't prepared for that, they lose. They lose the game because they're going up against people who are like shifting and doing things like that. Now, obviously, you're not doing like crazy stuff, not illegal stuff. That's just stupid. You just do illegal stuff. But people need to understand that every single successful person, 100% of them, has done something that others would consider unethical. And so, and now it's not like you're doing it on purpose. But it's like, I didn't see anything unethical about me crashing events, like at all. I was, if anything, I saw the exact opposite. I was like, well, if anything, I'm doing them a favor. Normally I charge for this damn thing. I'm walking in for free and performing. So like, I saw it as the exact opposite, but other people were like, that's unethical. And so, yeah, I mean, it's very different in terms of the reality. And it's one of the reasons why I tell people, like, you got to make sure that you're around these top-notch people. In the beginning, they won't actually reveal anything to you because they don't trust you.
Right.
So it's like, no matter how much you're around someone who's really successful, they're not going to tell you things about how they do their taxes or whatever. Like, not tax avoidance, but basically like how they reduce their taxes. They're not going to tell you things like that until you like really know them. And then when you know them, then they'll say like, oh, well, you set up an LLC like this, and then you set it up here. You can get the charge order protection here, blah, blah. So then they'll tell you eventually. And so what you need to do is you got to hang around these people, because eventually they'll trust you, and then you'll start seeing things behind the scenes. And so you have to assume that everything that you see from anybody is just the tip of the iceberg. Like everything, no matter what they tell you, no matter what they say, what they do, it's all the tip of the iceberg. Like what you're really trying to do is you just try to understand. And from there, like it's like a serious non-judgmental type of thing. Then they'll trust you. Then you'll start to see like, oh, okay, here's what they're really doing. Here's how it really works behind the scenes, all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of what people need to do. It's why it's why you never see like billionaires or like really, really successful people come out with courses on how to be successful, because people chastise them too much. It's like they say, oh, you need to do things like this. And people say, well, that's not ethical. Oh, you shouldn't do that. Well, in my experience, this. And it's like, who cares? Like, here's Bill Gates trying to tell you what he did, and you're not listening to him. And so a perfect example of this, the Occupy Wall Street thing. So if you type into YouTube, 1%er talks to people at Occupy Wall Street, you'll see this guy, Peter Schaefer or something like that. He's like in the 1%. He has like his hedge fund or whatever. He goes down to the Occupy Wall Street thing, and he's like, hey, I'm in the 1%. You guys want to talk to me or whatever? Several people, like one dude actually called him a fool. He was like, you're a fool. He's talking to this guy who's in the 1%, a multi-millionaire. That guy's not a fool. And you have this guy here who's broke, who wants to make money, calling this multi-millionaire a fool. Now, do you think this guy will ever reveal anything to this guy after a moment like that? And so that's why, like, I tell people, you want to be around certain people and you're just like paying close attention to them. You're not saying anything. You're understanding everything. It doesn't mean you have to do what they do. You just understand what they're doing. And that's all you want to do. And then you'll start to see like what's really going on. Yes, I really do believe in the whole, like, you want to be careful about who you're around, like the people you're around, because the conversations are very different. Like when you're around regular people, conversations tend to be about people. They tend to be about people and like news and stuff. When you're around like the top super successful people, it tends to be like around business and money in general, and like little things like that. Like I notice people who don't have money don't like to talk about money. People who have money, they always talk about money. Like pretty much all of my friends who have money, whenever we get together, we are always talking about money. Like, in fact, just the other day, well, not the other day, but a few weeks ago, I was talking with this guy. Well, I just met this guy out here, and he's a guy, he's very well connected. Like he knows a lot. He does a lot of business. One of the first things he said, he was like, we should come up with some ideas on how to make $1 million in the next like week. And so like, that was like the first thing, one of the first things that he said. And so I was like, oh, like he's obviously, he's not afraid to talk about money, and people who are afraid to talk about money usually don't have it. And so it's like little things like that you just get used to when you're around super successful people. And like things like how super successful people tend to be very direct, and like everyone else, they kind of beat around the bush for stuff. In successful people, they're kind of just like, well, boom, they just say exactly what they want from you, things like that. So
that's so interesting, because I'm actually currently in a situation where it's a collaborative type of project, and I have no problem talking about money. I think it's important to talk about money, and I mean, I don't honestly, well, I guess I've kind of evolved to this point where I do like to talk about money. And honestly, I don't want to work with someone that doesn't want to make money. That's just my thing. And honestly, that's probably like the first thing I say to people. I say, hey, if you don't want to make money, I don't want to work with you. But anyways, so in this situation, we are trying to make money, but I can just feel that the person that I'm collaborating with doesn't want to make money. And I'm like, why are we in business? Because I look at time, energy, as all of this is an exchange.
Yeah.
And for me, especially if I'm taking time and energy away from my children, I do expect to be compensated for that. And so when I am dealing with that kind of thing, and you can just feel like there's like this mindset of like, I don't feel right taking money for what I'm doing. And I'm like, like how do you get around that? Because
Well, I mean,
there's nothing wrong with, in my opinion, making money.
yeah,
That's
you mean
why
like how do you get around the like the
I,
partner thing, or just
I mean,
the mental block of just charging for what you
no,
want to
I
do?
think that is important. And I think here's the thing, and this is how I was. I'm not going to even lie. I was guilty of this too. When I first got into business, I felt guilty for expecting money in return for my time and energy.
Mm-hmm.
But I did some self work on myself, and now I don't feel that way. And I think that a lot of people feel that way. And like you were saying, the conversations are typically different among successful people and people trying to make it,
Yeah.
where they feel comfortable talking about money. And when it comes to exchange, when it's you're exchanging your time and energy for money, people feel guilty. And I think that we need to evolve past that. And I'm like, did you ever experience that, like, in your
Well,
journey?
I never felt guilty, uh, but I think what happens is people need to develop I think people need to develop like high self-esteem, like self-esteem to the point where it looks like arrogance to most people. And that's another thing that you'll notice with super successful people is they have the self-esteem to where it borderlines on arrogance. And people looking from the outside, they tend to say, "Oh, that person's arrogant." In reality, they're just insanely confident about what they can do. But it's like in my head, I think I've always thought, okay, I know I'm good. Like I know not only am I worth what I'm charging, I'm worth way more. Like I've always thought that in my head in terms of, and this is the other thing I tell people is you don't know what's true or not. Like you literally don't know from a scientific standpoint, all that sort of stuff. You don't know if something is true or not. What you have to do, you have to use your thoughts in terms of, is it useful or not? So it's kind of like, is what I'm thinking useful? And so I would always think like super insane thoughts, which helped me get to that point to where it borderlines on that arrogance. Is one of the reasons why Michael Jordan, or no. So when Kobe first met Michael Jordan, their first like meeting. So Phil Jackson, the coach, I think Kobe was like ball hogging all the time. So Phil Jackson wanted Michael Jordan to come in and say like, "Hey, like you got to pass the ball sometimes."
Mhm.
And so as soon as Michael Jordan walks in, Kobe immediately says, "I'll kick your ass one-on-one." And so like immediately, here's the greatest of all time. And Kobe's like, "I'll kick your ass one-on-one." Like no hesitation. And that was the level that he was at mentally. And that's the level that you kind of have to be at, to where it's not just, oh, like if you say I feel guilty about charging, it's like you're here. If you say, okay, yeah, I'm okay with charging, you're here, but you should be way up here to where you're like, damn, I'm not charging them enough. Like shit, like I gotta charge people way more. And so I always thought that, like with me performing, when I was only charging $500 for a show, I knew it was worth at least 5,000. When I was charging 5,000, I knew it was worth at least 20,000. Like no matter what, even like the programs that I sell, I'm like, you guys have no idea. Like you're only paying $97 a month for this. This thing can make you a whole lot of money. It's worth way more than what I'm charging. And so that's like, it's not that it's not like affirmations. It's a true belief that you need to have. It's like when I first started selling my speaker product to speakers, teach them how to get on stages, I didn't have affirmations about my product is better. I knew my product was better than all the other guys. I knew with 100% certainty. Like I knew to the point where I'm like, look, even if Tony Robbins himself came out with a product for speakers on how to get on stages, it wouldn't be as good as mine, because Tony Robbins is a platform speaker. He doesn't teach people how to like get paid gigs. He teaches, like he would be good at teaching people how to build a seminar business, but to get paid gigs, I'm like, oh, I'd kick his ass with this type of thing. And so that's the level that you have to like operate at. And you think these thoughts, but you don't have to say them. Like, you can if you want, but like essentially you have to think these thoughts to where it borderlines on arrogance. And those type of thoughts will allow you to do the things that you need to do to make things happen. That's why they say like you got to believe in yourself before anybody else can. But what they should have said is like you got to literally have your thoughts to where it borderlines on arrogance. And even though I don't like the guy who said this anymore, it's very true. So like what he said is, show me a person who doesn't have an ego, and I'll show you a loser. And I was like, damn, I'm like, okay. Like, and so what happens is like you get to a point where I would change in terms of ego. I would change in terms of more like insane confidence rather than just ego. Because ego, it can blind you or whatever. But what he was basically saying is like, you have to build yourself up to a point where people look at you and they say, oh, that person's arrogant or whatever. And so, yeah, like that's how you're going to essentially like use your thoughts. And that's how you just make things happen. So like, if you're afraid to charge a certain amount of money, is really the opposite. Like, think about if you have the cure to cancer, and someone said to you, like if you said to someone like, hey, take this pill, your cancer is going to be cured. And they said, nah, I don't really believe you. You'd be like, dude, what are you, stupid? Like it'd be a complete like flip in terms of like your style, everything. You'd be like, dude, like this is the cure. Like what are you doing right? This is literally the cure. And everyone who tells you no, you would think that they're dumb. Like every single person, you'd be like, this dude is the dumbest mofo I've ever seen in my life. And so that is the level that you have to like truly get to. The only way you get to that level is through competence. So it's like confidence comes from competence. So you can only have confidence when you know that you're really good at it. If you don't really know that you're good at it, then you're not going to have that confidence. And so that's why Kobe, as soon as Jordan walked in, Kobe was like, I'll whoop your ass one-on-one. Because Kobe knew one-on-one, he was the best. Even Jordan actually said, like in an interview, he was like, yeah, Kobe would probably beat me one-on-one. And so it's like when you have that level of competence because you practice your craft for so long, the confidence naturally happens. So like with money, it's like if you practice saying to people, it's going to cost this much, it's going to cost this much, this much, this much, you build that confidence because you say it all the time. And so like even when I was charging money for gigs, the first time I charged like $5,000, the first time I said $5,000, I mean, that was a lot to me at the time. And so I was like, damn, like it was one of those where my heart was like beating and I was trying not to negotiate against myself because I was on the phone at the time. I was like, yeah, that'd be $5,000. And like a lot of times what people would do, that'd be $5,000, but just for you, it'd be $3,000. You're cool or whatever. So they'll negotiate against themselves like an idiot. So I used to do that all the time. I'm like, well, it's normally $5,000, but today it's $3,000. And so after you quote enough and you keep telling people a price, you now have confidence in your quote. So it's like at a certain point, eventually it was more like, oh, $5,000. But for you today, it'd be $3,000. That's how you do it at first. Then you get a little bit more confident. Now you're like, okay, it'll be $5,000. And once I actually held my breath one time, I was like, it'll be $5,000. And I'm like waiting, because I didn't want to like say anything. They were like, okay, that'll work. And I was like, I'm sitting there like, damn, okay. So all right, well, I'm gonna send you the contract. And like when it happens a few times, then all of a sudden you get confident. Now you get confident to a point where it's like, you know what, $5,000 is too damn low. $10,000. And so confidence comes from competence. So you just have to keep doing it over and over. And then poof, before you know it, it's like you deserve the money.
Yeah. And I think it boils down to knowing that you bring value too. Like, and I like what you were saying about being ruthless. That's your alter ego, being ruthless. And I think that is really important. And it's like you're almost, what is the word I'm looking for? Standing up for yourself.
Yeah. And that is what the ruthless thing is. Yeah. So it's not like I'm ruthless to people. It's not like I'm just like mean to somebody. It's more along the lines of no one can contact me. And then like if people say like, hey, let's go get lunch, I'm like, no, like stuff like that. It's not like, well, maybe another day. It's just no. It's stuff like that. Like,
yeah, I think that's important. And I think especially with women, I think that's a hard thing. And that's where a lot of women struggle when it comes to
Yeah,
business
yeah. Like
is that,
with women tend to do things like they say sorry like for no reason. Like,
right.
yeah, because like I remember like being on the elevator here. It happens all the time. Like I'll get off and like when you get off and a person's coming in or whatever, it's like, oh whoops, and like things like that. And I noticed almost all the women, they always say sorry, like, and so like things like that. It's like, stop saying sorry. It's like, what do you have to apologize for? And
Yeah.
so yeah, like yeah.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, because I've been doing this, like, I'm a little weird. I do this thing on, where I've been doing research on masculine energy versus feminine energy and how women tend to do that kind of stuff, and it does hinder us sometimes, especially when it comes to business. And I knew, like, for me, I was doing that. I was like apologizing and and for no reason too, and I'm like doing that kind of stuff. And sometimes you have to adopt that kind of energy, more of a masculine energy. And it's not so much that you're more masculine, but it's more so that you want to stand up for yourself, because that's something that I see it in men too when it comes to business. And that's where I was saying with the value and not wanting to charge people for bringing value, because it's this, they don't value themselves really, and it comes down to confidence. And it's like, it's interesting how all of that works. But I do
Yeah.
love that you do have to be ruthless, you do have to know your value, be confident in what you do, and that you do bring value and stand up for yourself when it
Yeah.
comes to business.
Yeah, and it's like you have to truly believe your value is here and what you're charging is here. Like it's not just something that you say to people, it's something you truly believe. And that's why like everything I do, like when I charge for something, I always in the back of my head I'm like, damn, I should definitely increase the prices. Like cuz I know that they're getting this much value and I'm charging this much. I just know it. And
And
so
you,
it's
yeah, and you see that so much in business where
yeah.
people don't have the confidence, or they don't see the value in themselves enough to actually build an amazing business when they can be so extremely talented. And I've seen this, like people are so extremely talented, and I'm like, I'm just doing gigs for free. I'm like, why? And that's one thing I can say about you. That's one of the things that I noticed about you, is that you can definitely see your confidence. And it's not like I don't feel like it's in an arrogant way whatsoever, but you can tell that you're extremely confident in what you do and that you do bring value to the table. That's so important, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it really is through competence because it's like the fake confidence, the arrogance. Arrogance to me is fake confidence. So it's like the fake confidence. It's more like their head. They just got a big head because they haven't really accomplished anything. It's kind of like they're just arrogance. Like, what are you confident for? Like, what? So it would be like some random person off the street thinking they can beat Michael Jordan in his prime or whatever. And it's like, what? Whereas Kobe thinking he can beat Michael Jordan, that's a different story. And so, yeah, it's just like one of those things in terms of, to me, arrogance is like fake confidence. And like to me, the only reason I feel like I have it is just because I've never actually had a job. Like I've only done business my entire life. Like since 13, I've just been making money. That's why my brother made fun of me because I don't know, it was a few years ago. Like it wasn't that long ago. It was a few years ago. And he said something. He was like, yeah, I'm going to see if I can get time and a half. And I was like, what? And he was like, time and a half. Goes, oh yeah, I forgot you never had a job. That's overtime. I was like, oh, like I literally did not know what the word time and a half was because I've never had a job before. And so it's like the confidence was just built through competence because my entire life I've just been doing business. And it's like you get to a point where you just do so much, you fail so often, you're just like, nah, whatever. And it's like you just brush it all off, failures, whatever. And then you know what you're good at and things like that. Like to me, that's what confidence is. You just know what you're good at, and everything else, you're like, nah, I suck at those, but I'm really good at this. And so that's why Kobe said to Jordan, he's like, nah, maybe you can beat our team or whatever, but in one-on-one, I'll kick your ass. And so he just knew. He's like, in
Yeah,
one-on-one, I'm the best.
yeah,
He just knew it.
really cool. So where can people learn more about you and what you do and find you online? I know you have Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, people go to benjibruce.com. That's my main website. They can just see all the stuff. And then bruceacademy.com is the program. So that's where you can sign up if you want to check out the program and see like all the behind the scenes of what I'm doing in my public speaking business and how I'm building that audience and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, benjibruce.com or bruceacademy.com, either one of those.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for doing this. I'm so excited because, like I said, I think we got connected because of my co-host Cliff Cage, and you came up as a suggestion. I was looking at your stuff, and I'm like, wow. Like I said, you definitely can tell, like you know your stuff, and I admire that. So I acknowledge you for the things that you do, and like what you're doing, and the value that you're bringing to the people. Like that's amazing because here's the thing, and this is what I said to someone, is that not everyone shares this kind of stuff. And I think it's important that we do start sharing it so we all can be successful and live the lifestyle or whatever the case is for ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thanks for having me, and tell Cliff I said what's up.
Okay.
And if he
Absolutely.
wants to play basketball, whoop his ass one-on-one.
Well, thank you again. And we will check you guys in the next episode.
All right.